welcome to the Lobby of Hobbies. Pretty much the idea is enter, share, and discover with us. So pretty much,
yes, sir.
Let's get to it.
Right. So, guys, the first thing is we want to introduce ourselves. My name is Judge. Long story short, I was given that nickname in high school, and it stuck with me for the rest of my life. I am a lot of things, but we'll start from the top. So I deem myself as a man of God. I'm a husband, a father. I'm also, as you can probably see in the corner over here, a Grammy certified musician and a producer. I'm a person I love making music. I love playing video games and board games. And I love God at the same time. So it's all fun and games, literally, for me. That's my entire life. It's fun and games.
I like the sound of that. So I guess, does that turn over to me?
Yeah.
Hey.
Who are you, guy?
So, like I said, the name is Jazz. It's a nickname. It's short play on my full name, Jazz Man. Growing up, people used to call me Jazz the Man. I guess I just make that much of an impact, right?
Nice.
So a little bit about myself. Just like Judge, I'm married as well to a beautiful wife named Delilah. She's my weakness. You know, I think everybody has a weakness. She is my weakness. We have an amazing 1-year-old daughter. Her name's Lila. Honestly, I like just being outside, enjoying my time with my family, doing things, getting into a bunch of different activities, hobbies. My biggest hobby right now is board games, as you can see in the back here. For those of you that can see, if you listen to us on audio, sorry. But yeah, got a bunch of board games in the back. It's a hobby that started, and we'll get into how we got into hobbies a little bit later. But that's just who I am. I love sports. That's probably the first hobby that I really got into. I was a big video gamer growing up. But that's a little bit about me. I dabble in a little bit of TV, movies. I think we all do. We have our favorite stuff. And for those that didn't pick up on the Samson reference with that Delilah, I'm a Christian man as well. You know, I have my faith that I stand firmly on. But honestly, I just like to talk hobbies with people. You know, Judge, we've been friends for quite a while, right? And we just like to kick back and just talk and just, you know, shoot the breeze, talking about whatever with whoever, right? It doesn't matter what backgrounds we come from, right? It's just like, hey, you like what I like what you like. Let's talk about it, you know. And that's the idea of this podcast, right?
Right. Yeah, we usually get in trouble, which is when our wives remind us, hey, either we gotta go because it's time to leave, or why aren't you home yet?
Yeah, exactly, right. It's
Yeah.
like I remember us being in that church lobby. It's like, this is not your lobby of hobbies.
Right.
It's time to go right now, right?
Definitely time to go.
So, you know, it's crazy if you think about it, right? This idea, this hobby, this podcast, this was like years in the making. We just like, remember we just cracked. I remember a couple of years ago we were just sitting down talking about this. We're like, we got to get this going. And I don't even think it started as a hobby podcast. It started just about it was like more like a hodgepodge podcast where we were leaning towards. But look what it came into, right?
Yeah.
Definitely, I think it was
definitely growing something great.
Yeah,
I believe so.
I think what's funny is that it's one of those things that it was hard for us to kind of take the jump, right? It's really hard for you to jump knee deep, right?
Absolutely.
You want to tiptoe in it a little bit, and you try to talk to people who have been doing it to see how they do it and how they're successful.
So you can get it right the first time. But when does that ever happen?
We'll find out, right?
Right. It surely will. Surely will.
But so all right. So we were talking about things, right? We were talking about family, video games, movies, you know, board games. So you mentioned some of the hobbies that you were into, Judge. Tell the people pretty much a little bit about your hobbies, like where they come from, how did they start, like how did they stem? You said growing up you were a music man, right? You still are a music man. We see that you know, that Grammy certification in the back. But honestly, like tell us about your hobbies, where you're at, and what that brings to the table for this podcast.
So it all began when I was 13 years old. I remember going to a music class in middle school, and the music teacher gave me a trumpet mouthpiece, and he was like, I want you to buzz in this. I'm like, what is that? What is a buzz? What does that mean? And he was like, figure it out. I'll give it to you, and let me know when you come back. So that was my very first challenge. And when I figured out a buzz, it was the best thing ever. I felt like I accomplished, like, I don't know, I just felt like I won in the world. Like it was just, I beat life in that instance. And then he gave me the trumpet on the other side of it. And, you know, those 3 little valves started hitting stuff and making little notes. And I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. And that's where it all started. So I've been playing trumpet for over 20 years. Um, as time went on, it progressed into many different many different instruments. The only reason was I'm a type of person where I can't just be interested in one thing. I don't know why. It's always been, I call it a blessing and a curse because, it's like a jack of all trades, but master of none. So it's it has its advantages and disadvantages. But nonetheless, ultimately throughout my years, I picked up piano a little bit, bass, drums, and also, what else was it? Oh, and I can sing a little bit. So funny thing about bass was I told my dad, like, hey, Dad, I want to play bass. And he was like, I said, I want a bass for my 18th birthday. And he was like, well, I'm going to get you this bass, but don't waste my money. And so now I go back at him and I'm like, hey, guess what? I got a gig every Sunday. I get gigs all the time now. I get paid for it. This is my little part-time gig. And even with that, it even evolved into something even greater. So now I have my own business, Astroboi Music Productions.
Boom.
And yeah, so we're officially LLC'd as November of last year,
Nice.
which is awesome. So now I'm just trying to get the music out there the same way we're doing this. I'm doing a Lobby of Hobbies, and just want it to be something great because music is a very consistent thing in my life because my dad was in the military, so we moved every 5 years. So I lived in Germany. They had to come back to give birth to me in Camden so that I wouldn't be an immigrant. Like, it was legit a thing. Like, so they came back to Jersey, had me, went back to Germany. We moved to Texas, lived there for 5 years, moved to New York, lived there for 5 years, moved to Virginia, lived there for 5 years. And then we've been in New Jersey since 2000.
Wow.
So, and the two things that were consistent in that time were board games, video games, and music.
Right?
So yeah, that's what pulled people in with me so fast. Cause I was a shy guy back in the day, moving around a lot. It's not easy to, gain friends, then leave them, then make new friends. It was
Oh yeah.
very stressful. And I could definitely tell I could definitely develop some anxiety over it over the times. But the one thing that broke it was every time I played something or did something, like if I did a beat on a table. Oh, yo, that was hot. What's your name? What you doing? That's nice. And that pulled people in.
Gotcha.
That was my icebreaker. So board games, video games was that for me too, because everybody played a video game. And that's how it got started. And in our family, as militaristic as they were, we definitely had the most fun playing those party games, like Uno, spades when we got older, because we ain't playing spades at 13, 15. But Rummy, was a cool little game. I Declare War, which we never finished ever.
It just went on.
Right,
Or it turned into a real war, right?
right, exactly. And then Tonk, which is like a smaller version of Rummy.
Gotcha.
And we play those games all the time. Every time we traveled, we always brought a deck of cards with us. So that's where it stemmed from. And then, now we are here and met you a few years back. We've been doing it ever since. We
Yeah.
started in ministry, young adult ministry, and LOJ. Shout out to LOJ.
Yeah.
And started board game nights there.
Yeah.
And as it progressed and went through, it evolved into this. So I'm glad to see that it's grown the way it has, and knowing that it definitely stems from where we both come from, like before even LOH. Like that's what I'm a short Lobby Hobbies to LOH now.
Yeah.
So it's awesome to see that we have people that want to support and help and be a part of something positive, especially at a time like this. Board games are always used to deemed as a waste of time. A lot of people or deemed as childish, like, oh, that's not something you should be doing. That's you wasting your time. You could be out here working or something. And I'm like, yeah, but I stress out a lot, so I need to de-stress, and that's what video games, board games, and music do for me. So, but even with that mentality, making music a business for me, and even doing this, it can make money for you too. It can help you too. You helping others as well as yourself, and get a little money on the side. You know, ain't hurt nobody.
Yeah, no, I feel you. Like, I think that's how it was with me, right? Like, growing up, you know, my mom was a single parent for the first 5-6 years of life.
Yeah.
You know, coming from New York, we came down here to Jersey. You know, she met an old boyfriend, wound up getting married. You know, she had 2 other kids, my brothers. You know, and that man raised me. He's my father. That's the only father I know today, you know. But, you know, growing up, you know, we were in the inner city in Camden for a year, and it was like, yo, we got to get up out of here. We got to try and find a way, right? So I remember my parents just took this drive. They went into this, at the time it was a farmland, but right now it's like, you know, it's a bigger suburb, right? Well-known suburb here in South Jersey. Shout out to Washington Township. You know, the people there, you know, sometimes we learn as the uppity ups because we just refer to ourselves as township. It's funny, all the other townships around us are like, they refer to themselves as township, you know. But growing up, you know, I got involved in sports in 2nd grade, you know, from t-ball. That was like the first sport I had. And I remember my dad took me to sign up. We came back with a bat, and a ball, a glove. I remember my glove was plastic. It was funny. It was this plastic glove. I think the only leather on the glove was the laces, right? and as we went through, you know, I remember, you know, I went to practices. I started picking it up. But what was funny is my mom instilled early in me, like, here's a wiffle ball bat, here's a ball. You know, we just played, just me and her when we were growing up. And I gravitated to baseball. And that was my hobby that I started out with. Like, you know, I think board games was something that stemmed later, but sports was where it was at. I grew up playing baseball. As I got older, it's like, hey, let's try basketball, right? And I grew up in a predominantly, you know, Caucasian area. You know, I think, you know, there was more Black, more Asian than there was Spanish, right? So
right.
I think at the time, like, I didn't know, you know, if you look at like Major League Baseball today, there's a lot of Latin players, right? So I didn't even know at the time growing up, like, the stigma that I had to have being a Latin kid playing baseball, right?
Right.
You know, thank God, I guess I was good. That was the one thing, right? I was a good, you know, one of the better players coming up. But honestly, I played, even though my parents didn't have much money. I remember we had these maroon, my first game we get our jerseys. It's a maroon jersey with white sleeves, and I had these royal blue sweatpants with this maroon jersey. And I get there, and right before the first game is team pictures, and I still have that team picture today, right? It's like,
oh shoot.
We
need to see that later.
You know, it's funny because my parents, we talk about that. We show my wife the picture, and it's like, this is where we came from. You know, It's like, you know, I said Drake started from the bottom, now we're here. But, you know, it's funny because that's where hobbies for me started. There was a sense of competition. As I grew up, you know, as I started introduced, it wasn't even kids that introduced it to me. It was like, you know, what my parents, like, you know, as a Hispanic person growing up, you know, it was a lot of dominoes, right? Dominoes, what you played out, that's what you see people playing around you. It was dominoes, like you said, deck of cards. So it was, like you said, or it was rummy. It was games I didn't know. Like, I remember having, you know, my family cousins who were still in the inner city, they knew spades. I didn't know a lick of spades. And I remember I sat down at a spades table, and I think I was like 11 years old, 12 years old, like a preteen, trying to learn spades, and all my cousins are just killing me. And my one cousin, who's my partner, is just yelling at me like, "You got to get these books," right? I think I left. I got pissed. I tossed the cards. I'm not playing no more. I walked over. My mom came over, and like, I think I was crying in the background. Like, she's like, what I was like, she's like, my mom was super competitive. She's like, no, you got to learn. Like, you just got there, you learn, and then you make it happen. But, you know, for me growing up, like, I think board games, it was like things like Mousetrap. You know, and I didn't even play Mousetrap. You know, we didn't read the book. We just tried to make the contraption, and all we wanted to see was the little cage come down on the mouse, right? I think we used to like try to roll like Matchbox cars and see if we could get it dropped. Like, to us, that was the game.
Right.
You know, but Mousetrap, Trouble, Sorry, the Game of Life, we played the heck out of the Game of Life, me and my cousins. And then Monopoly, which I grew up to hate. And it wasn't because I wasn't good at it. It was just because, like, this game is just all about economy. Like, it's just numbers. And then, like, all I'm doing is rolling a dice. And I would say, I roll these dice. If I don't get the dice that I need, I always miss over the spots that I want to be on the board. So it's just, for me, it was just too much luck. You know, so I kind of hated it. But then, you know, growing up, like I said, so I really never played board games. I wasn't introduced to any of these, like, you know, Pokemon as I grew up, Magic the Gathering. Honestly, being an athlete, I thought that was for nerds. I really thought that was for nerds, you know, and look at me now. Like I've played competitive games, you know, on national levels, things like that. And it's something that I myself I'm that nerd, right? I came up, you know, I don't think I played any other board games other than your standard deck of cards until I was about like 22 when I was dating my wife. I think we had this get together. It was a get together, and it's like, you know what? I'm going to be meeting her family. What can I do to kind of break the ice? So I remember in college, we went on this ski trip, and there were categories and taboo. We played these party games like till 3:00 in the morning with people I didn't even know, and I had fun. So my mind, like, just, I don't know how it did, just jump to that. Me and my mom, we went to the closest Toys R Us, rest in peace. Yeah, you know, went to the closest Toys R Us. I picked these two games up, categories and taboo. The next night I was at my wife's house and her family's house, and she had family in from out of state. It was around the holidays, and man, we had a blast. Same thing till 2:00 in the morning. And I was like, everybody's like, "Oh, Jazz, like, you got to bring some more games." I was like, "I don't own any other games. Like, you want me to bring Life? I could bring the game of Life. You know, that's the only other game I know." So I think that night I went home, or the next day, and I started like just Google top board games, and I came across the boardgamegeek.com. Just came across that. And then I saw there's some YouTube videos on like the top board games, and it's been over since then. Like my collection started with I played Pandemic, because at the time that was like the hotness that year. I think it was in 2008. That was the hotness, was Pandemic. And shoot, man, from that point on, it had been over. I just played nothing but board games and started playing stuff. It opened a hobby for me, because growing up, it was all video games. Like you said, everybody played video games, right? So to me, video games was where it's at. And I think right around that time I started playing board games, for me, video games kind of diminished. I think I used to have the PS4 and all that stuff. And it was just like, hey, there's another world of games that if you play video games, there's a world of board games that will fit you. There's some games out there that are like video games. And I think that's when I started introducing you in those board game nights at church, right? Into these other games. And we sat down, and it had been over from there, right? And then we got into playing Marvel Dice Master. Shout out to Marvel Dice Masters. It's not the same thing that it used to be, right? You know,
right.
It's a great game. You know, unfortunately, it hasn't kind of blown up to where we were hoping that it blew up. But I remember the first time we're like, yo, let's just try this Marvel Dice Master thing, because we do have that passion for, superheroes. Which is, again, that's another hobby, right? Superheroes, like that was my thing. Yeah. And I think that's where I blew up. And from there, for me, meeting players like at game stores, like, oh, the people actually play this game, you know, in the store and compete. And I think we helped them grow the South Jersey community, right? So we started playing this game. And then from there, I was getting introduced to other board games. Like people like, hey, you want to try this game? You want to try that game? And I think for me, that's where this hobbies that grew from as a kid that I used to look at and be like, oh, you know, that's not, you know, like you said, it's not, that's not fun. That's kind of boring, or, you know, I really don't want to get into that, or whatever the case may be. But I think that also that was a cultural thing for us too, growing up. Like we didn't have those, you know, we were introduced at a young age to these like Settlers of Catan and, you know, these Ticket to Ride games that have been around since like the, you know, mid to late 90s, you know, when we were in that middle school, that prime age to start getting introduced to board games. It wasn't like that for us, right? It was one of those things that's like, you know, it was kind of nerdy. So we just stick to our video games, and we don't, you know, our cousins and our family don't look at us any differently, right? We don't have time for that. But I will tell you that we did have some crazy family wars over games of Parcheesi, you know. But again, that was one of those, whoever got the lucky dice rolls is the one who pretty much won, you know. But that's where we're at. Like that's kind of where it is. But like I said, I think with the Lobby of Hobbies, the idea is like, you know, us talking about like where our cultures come from, whereas people, you know, people of color, like where we come from, how we transition into the hobby, right? Because I think, you know, you went to your first convention, PAX Unplugged here in Philadelphia, right? And you know, it's like you have an expectation of what when you and I are sitting down playing games, like what we enjoy, and then when you go to these conventions, it's like, you know, it's a whole new world. You meet some good people, You know, it makes some great people that we've been able to connect with, that we still connect with now. You know, I know people that I've met playing Dice Masters that I introduced you to. Shout out to the guys over at Game with Sidekicks, Isaac, you know, those guys on that podcast. But it's awesome to see that there are people in this hobby that are always so, and at least for me in the board game hobby, that are so open and inviting, right? I think with a lot of things, there's going to be those people in whatever hobby it is that may not be as inviting, right? Whatever the case may be. But I think that's the premise of what we're doing here, right? Is to invite everybody in, right? Let's share about what we do, whether it be music, whether it be games, video games, sports, whatever the case may be. And let's just talk. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's see where we're at. And maybe in the process of it, the same way, you know, I had been introduced to board games. I shared that with you. Now, you know, your collection is growing, right? And to that point, and then maybe people will learn a little bit of what we have, right? What we have to share. And in the process, we can learn a little bit of what they have to share and then discover something new for us, right? I think that's the premise of where we're at, right? So
definitely.
So with that, you know, let's start, since we're here to talk about hobbies, let's start talking about the hobbies that we're big into, right? Video games, board games. So let's start off with, let's do a little top 5. What do you say? All right, let's look at top 5 video games. Shoot them to me, give them to me, describe them to me. Why are they in your top 5?
Oh man, here we go. Top 5 video games. All right. So at number 1, all time, and this is without even, I already know, it's just the greatest of all time in my eyes. This is my opinion. Final Fantasy VII, PlayStation 1. That's number 1. Number 2, after playing it and not even finished, watching the gameplay on it, because, you know, now that's a thing. Being able to watch gameplay and watch people play games, because I don't have that much time to play games. So I have to watch other people and live my life through them. Is Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Okay.
that just dropped during this whole pandemic. And when I tell you, I don't know what it is about that game, but I think it came at the right time when I was younger. And, you know, first game that I didn't realize until now that has an end game, meaning like after you hit level 99, what are you supposed to do? You know, you got all these extra super bosses at the end, like the Ruby weapon, Emerald weapon, and Ultima weapon, and there was another one I can't remember the name. But those 3 guys, once you defeated them, that was the end game. You know, after you defeat Sephiroth, excuse me. Spoiler alert. You know, you had that option, you know. So nowadays you see a lot of games doing that, you know. This is when you bought the game, you got the full game. It wasn't like, oh, it's $60 and we're going to send you season 1, which is just another piece of the game. Season 2 is another $45. Like, this is like, I spent $50 for Final Fantasy VII, all 4 discs, the beginning, the end, the extra, and the end game, like after end game stuff. So those are my top 2. Next 3, number 3 is The Division.
Okay.
I think timing is everything when it comes to games you like. And that came when my first was born and I actually had off of work. And my first being Aria, it's my oldest daughter's name. And wife, we both had off of work, so I took care of her at night. It got so big, we made a whole group of people that we played online all the time, and it was cool. So 4th game, The Division 2, because that's currently out, and I'm rocking on that right now, which is I'm loving it. Shout out to Title Update 10 that just happened on Tuesday. The tweaks and the nerfs and the buffs that they made on these weapons and these mods are just crazy, and they're amazing. I can't wait to get back on it. And then my last but not least, I cannot go without saying and giving love to one of my first-person shooters, GoldenEye 007 on Nintendo 64.
I remember playing a lot of that.
Man, oh man, that game just put a lot of gadgets, different guns, getting the guns. That's another one that kind of had a little end game to it. Little clues and ways to get secret weapons, and, you know, that online playing against people, the PvP part, you know, that was a big thing. Oh, yeah. So, you know, we didn't have that before. You know, that didn't come in, as far as I remember, like from what I remember, it didn't really come in until like Xbox and the original Xbox and Halo, when you started playing against a lot of more PvP was a thing. As gaming evolved, it just went really well. So But those are my top 5: Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 7 Remake, The Division 2, and GoldenEye 007. What you got for me, Jazz? What's your top 10, top 5?
You know, what's crazy is all of my stuff is like, for me, is much older. You know, like I said,
okay.
Like I've been out of the gaming since I was like I said, like 21, 22. But I think even since then, like I have a 17-year-old brother now, like with him growing up, you know, I still get over his house. And sometimes, you know, I'm trying to remember what I used to play when I used to play Call of Duty when it first came out, right? On the Xbox. You know, the Call of Duty, I'm talking about Modern Warfare. That was when it, like, Call of Duty really just sprung, right?
Yeah, right.
Online gaming was a thing.
Too.
You know, I used to be it with that game. And then now, like, it's true. When you get older, like with anything, if you don't really play it, you suck at it. That's just how it is, right?
Yep.
But I'm like I see my brother playing. I'm like, Dad, your sensitivity is like all the way up, and you know, like you got these like extra, you know, what they call them, scuff controllers, right? You know, got all these extra buttons. And listen, just get me through. Show me what I did. Yeah, I'm a camper. I'll be honest. I'm a camper now, right? Because that's the only way I'm going to get any kills. Like for me, a victory is breaking even. You know, you know, with my KDs, right? My KD ratio. So, but honestly, for me, I have to think back of games that I was immersed into. You know, games that told a story for me that I was just like really into. And I can't say that I have an order to these. There's probably one or two that'll stick out. But I'll start. I have a little honorable mention, and the only reason it's an honorable mention because honestly, I did not finish it, and that is The Last of Us. That story in that game, it's so immersive, and it's crazy because I told my brother, I know the new one drops tomorrow. Actually, it drops in like another hour or so here in the East Coast. I was just at my brother's house earlier today. He has it downloading. It's going to be ready at midnight, and I think he said he's just playing it until my mom walks in on him and tells him, "You got to go to bed." But
nice.
But I told him, listen, when you get some time, I got to come over so I can finish, you know, my game on The Last of Us so I can get that story. But I honestly think that is easily going to crack my top 5. But until then, it's got to be Resident Evil 2. I think that was the one that really hit me graphic wise. I was just blown away by what it did graphically. But I've always been a fan of horror movies. Like that's just me. You know, it's crazy. Even as a little kid, I used to watch horror movies by myself, get scared, have nightmares. My parents would come in, but that's just me. It was just something about the thrill, and that game used to make me jump. And that's one of those, the first games to really make me jump. And I know it's funny because you shake your head because I know you're not really a horror fan, right?
I am the exact opposite. I cannot do horror movies at all or horror games. I tried playing Resident Evil and I was like, oh nope, that's it. Turn it off.
So for me, I think, you know, it was just the story that told, and you know, and this virus that you're trying to figure out how this virus came about and how they're infecting this virus. It's like almost like adds like a little bit of like a conspiracy theory type of effect that, you know, a lot of conspiracy theorists now that they can kind of jive with, right? You know, especially when we're talking about this pandemic and things like that are going on, right? But it was just one of those things that the story was just there for me. I think the OG for me on my list is the original Legend of Zelda. You know, that nice, it just, you know, the little platformer, you know, it's not even a platformer, you know, you're just exploring that game and, you know, trying to find those little hidden secret hideaways where you can have it. I think that's the first game for me that I was like reading in the little magazines to find out where these other hidden rooms are so I can get that special weapon and I can kind of go in and defeat these bosses. But for me, that was the one game that I just used to spend hours upon hours to just beat. And I think even today, if I had my Nintendo in front of me, and I think it's in my attic, I still have it, and I still have my original copy of that game. One day, when my daughter is old enough to start playing video games, I might bust it out so she can try. And this is what video games were when Daddy used to play, right? But yeah, that game is the OG. And I think for any of the Zelda fans, the Link fans out there, you know, for them, their love for the game, I think, always stems from that. You know, with that, you just jump into the Nintendo 64 version, the Ocarina of Time. You know, that game was, you know, for me, that was my Final Fantasy VII. You know, just going around this game, you know, it had this RPG style format. It was just, you know, and the things that you can do it now with Link in this 3-dimensional world, it was just, the game was just stunning. I know it was tough because for me, it was either putting that or Mario 64 on this list. But It was definitely Ocarina of Time. That was the game for me. Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty. And it's funny because when you think back on Metal Gear, I think for some people it's just this was not the best game for them. It was a Metal Gear Solid 3, but for me it was 2 because I think this is where I really got immersed. I did play the first Metal Gear, but Metal Gear Solid 2 is when I really got immersed into the franchise, and it was just something about having Solid Snake going around like with a little exclamation point, and
Yeah.
it's funny because I have that as one of my my ringtones on my phone for when I get a text message, But that game is something that I think for me it told a story. Some people didn't like the story, but for me I loved it. To each their own, right? But for me it was always about immersion, something that really just that sucked me in, and it was that game. And then my last on the list, right now, if I was to probably say, this would probably be my number one, and it's not even a specific game, it's a series, and that's the Uncharted series. I remember when I had PS4, actually PS3 it started out, and just seeing Drake and this, for some people their game was Tomb Raider. No, like Tomb Raider, I don't think I even owned Tomb Raider, but when Uncharted came out, this was like what Tomb Raider should have been. The storyline, I remember my wife and I were dating when the first one dropped, and I think I was playing it. I think I brought it over to introduce her brothers or something like that. And I'm playing, I'm showing, and she actually sat there and watched me play this video game. And she's looking at it and she's like, is this a movie? Like, this is a pretty good, like, I don't really watch these, these animes or whatever, but looks like a pretty good movie. I said, this is a video game. And she's like, so through that series, that was the one game that was funny, is my wife would actually sit down with me and watch me play it. And
nice.
When it came to video games, she doesn't play video games unless it is Street Fighter. That was her thing. And Blanca is her person. She's got it. So I remember when we were married, when we got married and we were able to get the DLCs on PlayStation, she said, you got to download Street Fighter. That's the only thing I'll play video game wise. But again, I think as I started to get immersed into the board game hobby, things for me in respect to video games, they kind of declined. So now I'll play the Madden here and there. I like the competitive stuff, MLB The Show, those types of things. So for me, it's always the competitiveness. But I will tell you this, I will be finding a way to have to finish The Last of Us and then get into The Last of Us 2. It's some way, somehow. My wife and I and my daughter will probably have to use the guest bedroom in my parents' house, for the next couple of weeks, so right. I can play that. But on a serious note, I think for me, like video games, it was just immersive, and those were the 5 that really got me really loving the hobby. And I honestly wish for me I had the time to play as much as I do. And I think when you're really drawn into one hobby, it's whatever that hobby is. Like, see, this is the hobby that I'm drawn into. And it's funny, I don't even have the time to play all of these, right? Like, I couldn't even tell you which are part of my shelf of shame. But when it comes to board games, there are certain ones on here that are still in strength that I've been dying to play. And then when I get to play them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's really good. I wanted to get rid of it, sell it, trade it, whatever the case may be, but it's on my shelf for a reason.
Yeah, and it's actually funny because because of what it looks like behind you, it's the only reason I got into board games in the first place. I'm like, and because my whole thing is I love art too, so I'm definitely a visual person.
Yeah.
So like when it comes to like what the art looks like and does it capture my eye, and if it does, you have my attention. Like, so this whole time I'm listening to you, but I'm looking at Flotilla and remembering what, like, when we played till like 1 o'clock in the morning in PAX, with the guys that I just met that you knew.
Oh yeah.
So but yeah, I forgot. I got to give you my honorable mentions. My honorable mentions, there's a few because I do like fighting games too.
Okay.
So fighting games, first person shooters, and RPGs is what the way I go. And fighting game wise, it was always Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. And combos and like all that crazy and the stuff going on, 3 characters at a time. Amazing game. Loved it. Loved the crap out of it. It was amazing. You talked about like The Last of Us, which Right now, I'm a part of a group called Grown Man Business. Shout out to them. They are the main guy. He streams every day on Mixer, um, Xbox. So what he's been playing now is The Last of Us, prepping for The Last of Us 2
Okay.
tomorrow. So hopefully, I don't know if he finished. I didn't get to watch him today, but hopefully he gets finished. Shout out to his name is O Diddy 74. If you ever see him on, if you want to check him out on Mixer, O_Diddy 74 DIDDY 74. But yeah, so we rock out together. We played the Division in Division 2. That's where that came from. And but in reference to that comparison of that Last of Us was for me was actually Tomb Raider.
Oh yeah.
I played them. So I played the first and the second one. I have the third one, and I just got to get that time. Same thing. I don't have
Yeah.
time to play any games, let alone video or board or even make music at this point. So and it's just a part of being a dad, being a husband, during this whole pandemic. So we just trying to keep the peace
Yeah.
at home for work. So gladly enough, I'm working from home, and my wife is too. So we're not that hurt, but at the same time, it does take a toll on us because we have to work, and the two kids are young. One's 4 and the other one's 2. And they like to be loud and like to make noise, and they like to get into things that they shouldn't be getting into. So we have to monitor them all the time. But yeah, those are my honorable mentions for video games. So since you're a big board gamer,
Yeah.
I guess we can go into the top 5 for you. Top 5 board games or types,
Okay.
however you want to do that.
Oh, I could just name them in the top 5 that I have, but I'll start with my honorable mentions and
Okay.
why they're there. And one is there because for me it's more of an experience, and it was hands down the best experience I've ever had at a board game table. And the other one, I haven't played it enough, and I know if probably I got maybe 1 or 2 more plays of it, it will easily shoot up into definitely the top 5, might even be the top 3.
Gotcha.
But those are Pandemic Legacy. I think I said before, Pandemic was the one game that really got me into the hobby immersively. Like when I talk about into the hobby, I'm talking about modern board gaming, right? So the same way, you have video gamers who are into gaming from a standpoint of competitive play and, getting their teams online, like, you with the Division 2, you have your set of group that you're like, we're going to get on this day and we're going to compete. We're going to play. But Pandemic was the one game, and it was something about this cooperative game. And I remember when I first asked for it, my wife and I were dating at the time, and I said, I got to get this board game. It's I'm hearing everywhere that it is a great game, and I said, and it's a cooperative game. I don't even know what cooperative board games are. All I know is that it's your group of people at the table trying to beat the board. To me, that was like a video game, right? You and your team or whatever the case may be, and you're trying to beat a level or get to the end game and win. So I thought that just that idea was interesting. And I remember we opened that up and I was like, ooh, there's a lot of pieces to this thing. I don't think watching enough, how to play videos on YouTube and reading, was at the time preparing me for what I was about to dive into. But I remember the first time we played just Pandemic as a whole, and it's funny because it's not the honorable mention and it's not even on my list. But like I said, I have to mention it just because it's what got me into the hobby. And it was, I remember being at my in-laws' house, and my wife and I, like I said, we were dating at the time, and we're at her dining room table and we're playing this game, and it's like, Pandemic, for those that don't know, it's a cooperative game where, you and your teammates, you're taking on the role of different people. So like you have a scientist, and the scientist can find, cures for the disease a little bit quicker. You have the medic who can heal the disease, kind of get the disease off the board. You have this operations expert who can build research stations on the board. And the premise of the game is just to move around the board as, a pandemic. This is literally what we're talking about. Like 4 different viruses are flooding the board, and they're represented by these color coded cubes. And there's 4 different color codes that are, flooding this board. And if you do not cure the disease in time, or if the deck runs out that you have to draw through, if you don't find the 4 cures in time, you lose the game. And I remember the first time we played it on, introductory level, we got our butts handed to us. Of course, we didn't know anything about modern board gaming, but, my wife at the time, who was, trying to study to be pre-med, she was immersed in the game, and she comes from no board game knowledge at all. And she was just going to check it out. She's dating me, and I'm like, oh, wow, this is nice. She's going to play this game, yeah, she the girl that I want to marry. And look, she's going to try this hobby with me.
Nice.
But honestly, we sat there for hours on end until we eventually beat the game. And I think, it's funny because one thing, it was like, it was definitely past midnight, probably 1 o'clock in the morning. I think, my father-in-law didn't kill me. Why is he still in this house, right? At such late times. But, I think that immersed me. I was like, this is what board games were about. But Pandemic Legacy is just a version of this game where you start off with a base game, same premise. You're trying to heal these viruses, but as the game, you pretty much have to play this game over the course of a year is what the time frame within the game is. So each playthrough is a month. It is representative of a month, and you have certain objectives to complete to, in essence, win the month. So it's like almost like a video game where you're playing levels, and you have 2 opportunities each month to win. So if you lose in the month of January, you have only one more time to play the January level over again. And you kind of get some perks if you do lose before you move into February. And as the game progresses, you're opening boxes and you're discovering new things. And, I don't want to give no spoilers for those who've never played it, but, the game completely changes. And if you've never played a Pandemic game, I think you can even get into this game as being the first version of Pandemic you play, because it is something that the game changes over time. The board changes month to month, and you try and beat it. And like I said, it works as a cooperative. So you have your team, and you really want to play this game with the same group of people all the time. And for me, cooperative board games is something that my wife loves, and she loves Pandemic. I would probably say that's probably her all-time favorite game. But me and her sat down to play Pandemic Legacy, and it was just us, and we played multiple characters. And as we played, it was just about beating it. And I just remember sitting down, before my daughter was born, and we would play 2-3 months at a time, 4 months at a time. And then it sat on our shelves for about maybe almost a year before we got into it. And then before my daughter was born, I was like, we've got to finish this because we're probably never going to get a chance to finish this again. And yet the experience of that game was incredible. But the other honorable mention is Everdell. I've written a review of this game. It's actually on our website. At the end of I'll give you guys the website link. But this game is a worker placement game with a little bit of what we call tableau building. I know there's going to be some people that don't even know what this is. They're here for the video games. But like I said, if you love video games, you got to try some board games. Give it a shot. But worker placement is a mechanic in board games where pretty much you have workers or people. In this game, they're animals, they're critters, and you're placing them out on the board to gain resources. And as you gain these resources, you're trying to kind of build cards from your hand, which are either, in essence, you're either building a part of your little town or city, or you're, in essence, hiring a worker or like a critter to work within this city. And the tableau building, when you talk about tableau building, it's this idea of comboing cards. So when they're out and they're in front of you, and we call your tableau, or pretty much like the space in front of you, as you do different actions on the board, if you have these specific cards out in front of you in your tableau, they kind of trigger a mechanic off of each other. So if you have this card build with this card, it might give you an extra bonus resource or an extra bonus action or whatever the case may be. But worker placement, hands down, is my favorite mechanic in games, and tableau building is my second favorite mechanic in games. But having the two of them in one game, it just sets this game at a different standard. But the biggest thing about this game is if you put it on the table and someone is never new to board game, it's completely new to board games, this is the one game that I think someone will walk by the table, stop, and ask you, what is it that you're playing, because there's this huge, like this 3-dimensional tree that sits in the table. And this is one I think you've seen, but like on my shelf, but you've never played before. And this is one that we've got to get to. And it's not difficult. It's very, very easy. So that would be my honorable mentions. And that's the one that I think with a couple more plays will break the top 5 easily. And have another one called Clank. It's a deck building game. And the idea of it is just, deck building is you start off with a 5-card, a 10 card deck, and you draw 5 cards, and you're playing these 5 cards, and you're using the cards to purchase other cards to add to your deck. So what you're doing in essence is building a deck, building an engine. But as you play cards, you're building the deck, you're getting more money to purchase other cards. You're getting movement because you have this character that you're in essence diving into this dungeon to gain treasure, gain gold, gain money. And so these cards, when you play them, will allow you to dive deeper into the dungeon and move around, but you're also trying to not get killed by the dragon that's, in the dungeon. You don't want to wake up the dragon in essence. And you and the people that you're playing with, it's a competitive game, and you're trying to figure out who can, in the game, build an efficient of enough deck to dive into this dungeon, get the most treasure, and escape before everyone else does. And the first person to escape triggers, in essence, the end game. And there's like a ticking time bomb for everybody else to get out of the dungeon with their treasure before the dragon pretty much kills them. So if you can get above, if you get above the dungeon and, you don't necessarily die, you can still get I think you lose some treasures, but the idea is to get out of the dungeon so you can count your treasure. Whoever has the most treasure, the most points, wins the game. I love it. Deck building is a game that will really kind of get you into that mechanic of starting with something small, building up into something better and more efficient. And I think that's what's something about, board games, is having a plan as you go through. Like you said, you're talking about what really got you into video games, and even now board games, is the idea of the thinking process, right? Thinking about having something to go through and think through. And I think when it comes to all these games on my list, that's what it does. Another one, I have to throw it on here because I'm a huge baseball fan. It's a deck building game similar to this Clank, but it's called Baseball Highlights 2045. And it's pretty much, it's a dueling game, you versus another opponent. And you really don't have to be a baseball fan to play this, but it's a deck building game where you're, generating different types of players. You have cyborgs, you have robots, you have humans on your team. And in essence, you're sending up a batter to the plate, and then your opponent is playing a pitcher, and you're trying to see how these cards play out against each other. Are there any hits? Are there any runs that are scored? It's not too heavy, but it is very strategic in how you play your cards from your hand. Another one that we've played it with, family, when you've been to my house, is Blood Rage. That's probably in my top 3. That's my number 3 right now. And it's this idea of, these Vikings, and, you're going into, you're fighting in this Viking land, and you're trying to go through different provinces and trying to pillage the land of resources, and trying to build up your clan to be the strongest clan out there. You're fighting monsters, you're fighting warriors, you're upgrading your warriors. There's these beautiful miniatures that are on the board. And it's one of those games that I had to make sure I had everything of, which, yes, sorry, wife, it does get a little bit costly, but I find ways to probably sell and trade some games so I can pay for other stuff on my shelf to make sure I have it. But it's definitely probably the one game that I have had the most investment in, to make sure I have, because I love the game so much. It plays off of playing cards, drafting cards into your hand to be able to play them, and you kind of are fighting against other people. If you don't know about it, check it out. If you're into video games, I know this is one that we've had video gamers at our house, and I think, Judge, you were playing that game, and it's like, remember, we had this massive battle in Yggdrasil in the middle of the board, and it's like everybody just came into battle. And I think that deciding battle was what I think won the game. And I think it was funny because everybody was at different parts on the board. I mean, point wise, and it's like that final battle, I think, which happened to be like one of the last turns of the game, decided who won.
Right.
And it was someone who was fairly new to the game, but they picked up on it easily, and they don't even come from a board game background. So for me, like the games that I'm listing on my list are games that if you don't have a board game background, they're fairly easy and that you can get into, learn it. It's not too in depth, and it's like, especially if you come from a video game background, it should be fairly easy. But even if you don't come from any background, but if you just like competition, if you like, to try something new and try something challenging, I think all of these will kind of give you that feel. My number two that you've played with us, with my wife, my brother, and our other friends is Mansions of Madness Second Edition. It's funny because this stems around a horror theme. You don't like horror, but it's cooperative, right? I think that's the good thing. You work off of it, and you're trying to go through this mansion, and there's different. What's cool about it, for those that aren't into board games, but they're into like playing apps on their tablets or on their phones, this game has that mechanic. It has an app that kind of helps you with a story mode, right? And it has almost like this story that it's telling, and you're going through this, this mansion, and every person's playing a different character that has different abilities. And I don't think I'm really spoiling much by telling you the first scenario of the game is pretty much like there's just say he's some crazy lunatic guy who lives in this house, and he's like, you're trying to go through and find out what's going on in this house. It seems to be like haunted, as monsters are coming through, or I guess in essence demons or whatever the case may be. And like you're finding out there's like this open portal to like, I guess, an underworld that you've got to in essence close before this seance goes down or whatever. But I remember that was a pretty epic game, and there was just these times where you have this dice rolling, and it's like, wow, like that we were kind of on the edge of our seat, making sure we had those critical hits when we needed them. But like I said, I think with a lot of these games, if you are a horror fan, you'll love it. I think if you are into like video games or even horror movies and stuff, this is one of those games that you can sit down, around the table with people and enjoy. If you're for the Halloween buffs, like I'm not a super big Halloween buff, right? That's not me. But if you are like a Halloween buff that likes to play games, and I'll be honest, I like to play my I guess you would call them the Halloween theme games, I guess the horror games. I will play them around that October just to kind of, it's whatever people call it, festive. But that's the time that I can actually bring people who are not into the board game hobby, but they like Halloween, they want to play this. I'm like, okay, this is my time to kind of drag them in and try this stuff out, try the game out. But yeah, that's that one game. It's a pretty cool game. And then my last one, which is, I think when I introduced my wife to this game, I think she was like, oh, this is a boring concept. And it's called Viticulture, and it's a worker placement game, which surprise, surprise is the number one spot on my list. Is where you are pretty much trying to run the most efficient wine vineyard out there, and you're trying to build up your vineyard and in essence get victory points. So you're trying to get the most points in winning the game. But as you're going through and you're building trellises and you're upgrading your wine fields, the idea is you want to plant grapes. You want to go in different spots of the board to plant grapes, to make wine, to fulfill wine orders. So you have these you have visitors that are coming to your vineyard, and they're represented by cards, and in essence they have an order. So you might have this one visitor who wants a level 5 blush wine, and this one wants a level 2, and they also want a level 2 red wine and a level 2 white wine. So you have to pretty much find a way to make that wine in your vineyard, and then pretty much fulfill that order for that visitor, and then that visitor gives you points in return. It has a cool solo mode, so if you're a solo gamer, you can actually play the game and try to compete against the board. But it has a competitive. It plays well at all player counts, 2, 3, 4 players, and I've played it at multiple levels. And I think what's awesome for most of the games that I have on my list is my number one gamer that I play games with is my wife. And she's super casual. Like I have to talk her into playing certain games with me. The ones that are on my shelf that are in shrink, it's because she has not committed yet to trying them out. But one thing about playing the games with her is like she's like, oh, this is cool. I can see how this works. And what's funny is she's a casual gamer, but she beats me every single time. Every single time I can teach her a game, show her how it plays, and by like the first couple rounds, I'm destroying her. And by like midway, she's figured it out, and she's already figured out what my mechanic is or where I'm trying to go. And she blocks me, she destroys me, and she's a beast. But that's a great game. And I think what takes this game to another level is there's an expansion called the Tuscany expansion, which is adds another season. So instead of playing the game over a course of a few seasons, I think it's 3 seasons. This one, you're playing the game over all 4 seasons of the year. So, winter, spring, summer, fall. And there's some other ways to gain points with this game. So my wife has not yet played it with the Tuscany expansion. So the next time I do introduce it to her, I will introduce it to her with the Tuscany expansion and hope that my experience playing it with the Tuscany expansion already allows me to get a win. So Those are my board games. What about you, Mr. Newer to the hobby? What about your board games?
You mean Mr. Newest to the hobby?
Oh, it depends on who you're talking about, right? Because we might have some listeners who are much newer than you are.
Very true. Very true. So, in my defense, I only know these games through what we've played together. So, disclaimer, I don't have a lot of gaming experience, but the few games that we played together were that I really liked. Well, hold on, let me start that by going with the honorable mentions. These are games that I have currently that I want to build my collection, build the collection for, because I like to collect things. That's just who I am.
Don't we all?
Yeah. So the first one is Legendary. Just because I'm a superhero geek. My 2 absolute favorite superheroes, DC side is Batman, and in Marvel side is Black Panther. So with that, with the Marvel Avengers coming out during this time and everything happening a few years ago, with that whole Marvel universe really expanding, that's been the game that I really want to get into. Just a lot of cards, a whole lot of cards to go through, but definitely, because you can play it solo too, right? I believe.
Yes.
And you can play it group, you can play competitive. So it's cool that, that it has that option. So, and it breaks, and it even relates to the comics. Like they have different, like the Hulk, the World of the Hulk is this expansion. I think Deadpool has his own expansion.
Yeah.
Little things like that. So it's like, I thought it was pretty cool how they incorporated like comics with the game.
Yeah.
Other one, the one that we've actually played that I really like, but it's still an honorable mention, is Crusaders. I bought that off of you, actually.
That will be done. Yes.
Right. I like that. That was really cool. Just a real quick thing. Every time I play with Jazz, I know I'm going to lose. So every now and again, I try to get my confidence up and say, you know what, I'm going to try to beat him this time. And
listen, that's not always the case.
Well, I know when Delilah plays, we all lose. So,
we do.
So it's like it's a full cheat code. Like that's what Delilah's the cheat code. But it was a lot of fun. Like I can't really remember too much about it, but I do know like when we played it, I just had a ball, and it was really fun. I think that was the one where you can upgrade your soldiers.
Yeah.
And it was a few other things I can't remember, but
I think what was cool about it, for those that that are listening, when you are playing this game, it has this little rondelle mechanic, which a rondelle is just a way it's like moving around in a circle. You're picking up these tokens and you're dropping them in different spots, and depending on where you drop it, like where you end your turn, lets you know how much power you have on the specific action. So you're trying to, in essence, you're trying to figure out what action you want to do on your turn, whether it's move your character, whether it's, in essence, like kind of invade the board or overtake the board or build something, or, like you said, upgrade your army and upgrade your character. But depending on where you drop that last token, if you have 4 tokens there, in essence, you have 4 power to do the move action, and you have, and sometimes it's move plus another action. So you get 2 actions in one, and there's ways to upgrade your actions and flip. But I think if I remember correctly, when we were playing it, you had this like aha moment, but like a third turn, and you were like, oh, I can do now. I can upgrade this. And it just like blew up for you, and you were just like, all right, moving around the board. And that was one of those like, we've got to play this again. Like,
it was, yeah.
And I think that's the cool thing about some games, right? Like you play them and they have this aha moment, and it's like, oh, I just got to go right into playing this again, or try it again.
Right, and I think that's what it was. I couldn't remember exactly, because I couldn't remember if that was a Viking game, the circle part. So that's what I couldn't remember. So, like I said, guys, I'm coming from completely nowhere near any type of board gaming experience, even when it comes to terminology. So that's why I'm the co-host of this. So I'll leave that to Jazz. But my other honorable mention, there's one called Versus System. That's another superhero one. I have that too. Thanks to Jazz. Jazz has been the reason I get a lot of all my games just about. He finds the greatest deals ever. It's a cool, another card game, another superhero card game. Very cool. It has a nice cool mechanic to it, and I like collecting cards. That was my thing back in the day. Short story, back in the day when I was young, but anyways.
Bringing it back to music.
Right. Yep. It always goes back there. But when I was younger, I used to collect Magic cards. And I was, and my parents really didn't think nothing of it. But when my super Christian aunt came around, it was like, oh, no, they're the demons. They're devils. You need to get rid of them. I'm like, yo, this is like $500 worth of cards. Like, I'm not trying to get rid of it. Can I at least sell them? Can I please sell them? No, throw them in the trash. I was like, no. So I always felt like my essence of that gaming was taken from me.
Gotcha.
So now that, superheroes, they're not demons. So they're doing good for people. So now that they have that, it was like putting, cards and superheroes together. So, that Versus and that Legendary is where I really get a lot of my kick in. One that we played that goes like, this is number 6, is Wingspan, surprisingly. Wingspan, I definitely love Wingspan. Wingspan was nice. The birds, the eggs, the different abilities and how they can move and who gives birth to what, how many eggs you can have. I thought that was really cool, and it blew my brain up. I almost got overload playing it because I think we played it twice that one day that we played it.
That was the one where we sat down. I was like, let's try this game out. So, like, if you look at it, it's about birds. You're probably not gonna. Don't even get past the theme. Like, just get past the theme. Just look at the mechanics of the game. And I think I said, just try playing this and build your engine. The better engine will win. I think we might have lost each other. Hello?
All right. I feel like I need to explain what just happened. Can I do that?
I guess you can, right? We're back.
Yeah, so we're back in the midst of everything that happened. My electricity literally froze and glitched in my house. So it cut off my recording. So now I'm back. And we're back, excuse me, and we're about to get this started. So I know we're talking about Wingspan, and as that being my last honorable mention before I go into my top 5. Wingspan was a very fun game. I definitely loved the way to build your birds, because there was different types of birds that did different types of things. There's birds that was for the water, for the wetlands, and then for the like flies, the ones that fly and certain things like that. So
well, they all fly. They're birds, right?
Well, yeah, but weren't there like there were some penguins. There were some that were that can only be on land.
True.
And there were some that were like land and water.
Yes.
And then there were some that were like
strictly water.
Air, right, or strictly water or strictly air. And then air and land and air and water type thing. So I do remember that because I was like, that makes the game interesting.
Got you.
But so that was my honorable mention. So we're going into my top 5. At number 5, played it once. live at PAX, and actually won the game without not even believing in myself. Everyone else did, and that was Runestones.
Runestones.
Runestones is definitely fun. I definitely love the concept. I like the story behind it. You know, just the fact of like these majestic stones that have these abilities, grab the gems to activate them. You know, you have cards that you play with in order to gain certain abilities, right? I don't know what type of game is that. Can you help me out real fast, Jazz? Do you know what type of game that
Well,
is?
Runestones is a deck builder because you have those.
Okay,
Remember those cards that you're
the
playing
cards,
out, and
right,
what was cool about it is you can play it for like the number ability or the action ability. But if
right,
you played
and
it for the number,
the
I think
lowest
if I forget
number
it,
had to
yeah,
go
one of the
away
numbers like
forever.
had to go away
You're
forever to
right,
like lose that
right.
card.
I
So like
remember
there was
that.
that struggle of when and how do you play that card, right? Because it's super powerful.
Right. The higher number, yeah. If you played a
Yeah, yeah.
higher number, the higher number one. I remember that. So yeah, so actually, I won the game. It was fun. We played with like 4 people, and so I bought it. I bought it there with the first expansion, and then you sent me the Kickstarter. It was like, you better get it, and if you don't, I'll kill you. I said, okay, well, I'll go ahead and get it because I don't want to
Welcome to
die.
the rabbit hole that is Kickstarter.
Yes, and shout out to Kickstarter. You know, shout out. I believe it is. I forget the company that made it. I don't want to say the
Queen
wrong company.
Games.
Oh, I was right. I was right. I was
Yeah.
going to say Queen Games. So yeah, shout out to Queen Games because they, even in the midst of the pandemic, they've been up to date. They keep you up to date in Kickstarter. So that was really nice of them, to keep all the customers up to date. But yeah, so I got the Enchanted Forest in the second expansion. So can't wait to break that out because it's a lot of new stones, a lot of new different abilities, and it's really dope. It's number 5.
So I guess we got a review on that coming. We have to do a review on that.
We're definitely gonna have to do a review on that.
All right, sounds
Definitely
good. I
gonna have
like
to do
that.
a review of that. Yeah, so that'll come later down the line, guys. But you stay tuned. Stay tuned. Number 4 for me was actually Mansions of Madness.
All right.
Yeah, the reason is the dope thing about it is we had the TV set up for the game too,
Oh yeah.
and like as we went to explore, we opened up different rooms, and the rooms then we would literally grow a map, and the map would change every game we played. And my biggest thing with board games and video games is I'm not that competitive. So, I'm more of a team player. The only reason is because I've had dumb, bad experiences. This is why I don't play sports. This is why sports is the last thing on my list. And long story short, played basketball, and I was playing defense on offense against the player that had the same color as me. I looked over and I seen all the parents like, yo, whose kid is this? And I seen my dad, and he looked away. He was embarrassed. I was like, nah, all right, cool. Not playing it. I'm too confused. Nope. Played soccer. Was not that bad. I have asthma, so the running wasn't, didn't do much, but I was still a defender. And, got kicked right where you don't want to be kicked. And that collapsed my entire my vocal cords as well as my life. And so I quit soccer. Wasn't even going to try football because if I'm getting hurt on them sports in soccer, I'm like not going to last football. And then tried baseball, and there is always a possibility that you will get hit, but I got hit like 5 times. Pitcher threw it dead in my cheek in the same spot in the same game 5 times. And the 5th time is when I quit. So that's when I decided to try music 13, and then music went real well because I can't hurt myself in music. But even with that, I was never really a competitive person. I do love the play togetherness. That's my biggest thing. Like always being, we're here to work together. That's just
Gotcha.
it. So Mansion of Madness was that. It's a co-op game. And like I said, that the way the map just grew on you and the items, and if you check them out, we had certain things that would pop out, ghosts and big ghosts and small ones and all that. And it was funny because I remember the last move of that game, and we were all trying to kill the biggest monster that we had that just came up. And then as we killed him, another one came out and obliterated everyone, obliterated all of us.
It was crazy because that was everybody's like first time playing the game, right?
Right. And it was really good. Like it was mad fun.
Yeah.
So moving to number 3, Blood Rage. Blood Rage.
Ah,
That it
we're
same thing.
both at 3 on that one.
Yeah, same thing, because that the last part was it for me.
Yeah.
That one big swing, we were all in there. We just trying to figure out like who's going to get the win. Who's going to get the win after that.
Yeah.
And it's super fun. The world map, the design of the game was really awesome. The miniatures look really cool. And like I said, I'm more of a consumer when it comes to this right now. So if the box looks good, I'll read it. And if it sounds good, I'll play it. And if it plays good, it lands on my list. So, and that's what Blood Rage was. Number 2, I love this game still. This game, I just love it. And I'm glad I bought it. I just bought it. Dice Throw.
Ah.
I love this game. I love the characters. I'm a fighting game guy, so I guess technically I'm not ultraly cooperative, but I am a fighting game guy. So because of that, it's a player versus a player. They have abilities, master the ability, play the game. It's a Yahtzee with some tactics in it. And I just love rolling dice. I've never gambled a day in my life, but when it comes to Dice Throne, that's where I love it. Like, the characters are dope. Their art is amazing. Their read is awesome, and everything about that game is just dope. Like, I love it. I love every single piece of that game. Like, there's nothing that I don't like about the game.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Yeah. So, and it's easy to play. Like, it's easy to learn, easy to play. You can play in any difficulty too. Like, depending on who you play, you can play a pro and you get that, and you do get that level of difficulty, but you can play a beginner and get that level of difficulty too.
Yeah.
It's very flexible in your gameplay.
I think what's cool about that one is, like you were talking about the complexity, like, it's one of those games that you don't necessarily have to be a gamer to be competitive against the other person, right? So it is strategic, right? And how you play the cards, when you play the cards. But what's cool about that one is you can have someone who's completely new to games, right? And you can say, here, play this character. They don't have, it's not as complex as, because what's cool about the
Right.
game, they have a level of complexity to the characters, right? So you can give someone who's fairly new to the game a character that's lower level of complexity, like someone who just wants to attack all the time, or someone who has defense. And to kind of even it out, to kind of challenge yourself, you play a character that has a higher level of complexity, right? And then it's like, while you might have mastered some of the lower complexity characters and what cards you have to look for, but when you play someone with a higher level of complexity, it's like you have to get these things in order. And yeah, you can chain the things, but it's a cool challenge. I played my wife a couple days ago on that one, and it was like it came down to the very end.
Yeah.
Ultimately, she's like, I don't know if I really like this game. But well, it's not because she wasn't good at it, but for her, I think it was, she didn't see the super strategic. For her, she's like, no, this is just too lucky. But I was like, sweetheart, you got to look at there is some complexity and strategy and how you play these cards and this and that. She's like, I don't know, I'd rather play something else. But to each their own, right?
Right, yeah. And it's true though, because like right now, LOH is we're running a tournament for the game. Shout out to everyone that's involved in that. And what I learned the last game that I played was I play Samurai. And in Samurai, I didn't realize that, you can combo different cards into dice.
Yes.
So I actually comboed into an ultimate. And things like that. So, ultimate is obviously like Yahtzee. So it's all sixes, and, and with all sixes, you get this crazy ability that no one can block other than the fact that if you have a card that can maneuver the dice.
Yeah.
So, and I looked at that as, okay, that's a strategy to use, right? Because even though it is a chance game, like, like it is a little luck to it, at certain times of the game, depending on where your opponent is, you might have to roll that small straight or large straight to activate that ability to get what you need from it in order to counteract what's going on, what may happen in the next turn.
Yeah.
So there is a level of tactic in it, level of chance, and with that segues right into my number one, in which you already know what it is, and that is Dice Masters.
Yes.
That's the first game. I think I told you, like, hey Jazz, you should check. This is the one game I actually asked Jazz to check out. And he checked it out and he was like, yeah, you struck gold and you're going to regret it because now all we do is spend money. I'm like, you're absolutely correct. You're absolutely correct. And that's all we did. Spend
I think what's
money.
funny about that game, it's one of those that, like I said, you came from a Magic background, right? Like
Right.
you played Magic growing up. I think for me, my only for those that don't know, like Magic the Gathering is a world-renowned game. It's played everywhere. It's played in every game shop you go to primarily, but it's a competitive dueling card game, and it's what they call, it's like the boss of all what they call competitive collectible card games or trading card games, like Pokemon, where you're opening these packs to see what cards you get, like rare or whatever. And I know you came from that background, and I know playing games, like I was playing board games. I would go into board game shops. I would see these people playing this game. And again, I thought it was, even when I was into board games, I thought that was a little extra nerdy, right?
Right.
And for me, it was like, yeah, I can't get into a collectible type game because I hear it's just a money pit, right? It's just like, you're just going to fall down this rabbit hole and just keep going, and you're going to buy cards and buy this and buy that. And I remember you came to the, you said, oh, we're going to have this board game night at church. I'm going to go pick this up. Like, I found this at Walmart, and
Right. Yeah.
I was
remember
like,
that.
all right, I'll go check it out. I'll go pick it up. And because I felt obligated to purchase it so that you can play me, right? So I could play with you,
Right. Yep.
because I was introducing you to board games. And we sat down and played the game, learned the game, read the rule book. And we walked away. We're like, this is good.
Yeah.
This
That
is
game is
really good.
banging. Yeah. And the thing I loved about it was that, again, superheroes, in every which way, shape, and form, they did not discriminate on anyone. They had DC, they had Marvel.
They
They
even went into
went
Yu-Gi-Oh!
right. They have Yu-Gi-Oh! They have Dungeons and Dragons,
Yeah.
Warhammer 5000. Um, they have a whole bunch, and they all work together. So it wasn't like you had to play all those archetypes with each other. You could
Yes.
mix in a Dungeons and Dragon character with a Marvel character, or a Deadpool character, or a Flash and Arrow character. However you wanted to play the game. The cool thing was it was a little bit of a money pit, because in order to get like the super wares and certain things like that, if they weren't selling individually at the time, you had to buy the gravity feed, is what they call it, which is just a huge box of like 90 of them, and open up the gravity feed, and each packet came with 2 cards and 2 dice. So in each, one dice per card, basically. And super rares were like, I think it was like 2 or 3 in the box, of the entire box, or something like that.
Yeah.
So and super rares, obviously the best abilities. Some were broken, some were broken abilities, and when
Especially in
they
those earlier sets.
right, and when they went into competitive mode, for tournaments, around the world and things like that, it definitely it kind of turned me off a little bit from it, just because I knew that I could never grab super wares. It was some odd reason. Anytime I bought packs, even when I bought gravity feeds, well, no, I never bought a gravity feed, now I think about it. So maybe that's why.
Gotcha.
But when it comes to that, I never got super rares. Like, I always had to buy them off you. So it was like, or trade them.
Yeah.
So in that, it was always a crazy part of it. But ultimately, I still have the cards, I still have my dice, and I actually plan on doing something with them. So I know we don't play it as much, or barely play it or anything, but I plan on like showcasing them in some odd way in the game room. But that game was amazing. The game was amazing.
It's funny is, now that you talk about Dice Masters, it's like I'm kind of smacking myself over the head, because like literally that was the game that opened up the board gaming hobby for me, right?
Yeah.
From that, for those that don't know, I know Judge will say, like, I got heavy into the competitive scene, right? Like, I started, I was like, I'm never going to play a collectible game. You introduced me to the game, and I think in the next night I was on eBay seeing if they like sold stuff. So luckily, we didn't have really a local scene at all. If I remember
Right.
correctly, there was no local scene to play this game. There was no stores really that were playing it. And I said, I'm gonna go on eBay and let me see if I can like find games, like just like find like someone selling a lot. And I lucked out, because I came across the lot that someone was like selling dirt cheap. I guess someone who must have bought big into the game decided they didn't like it. They started selling it, and I got like three of the super rares from the first 2 sets, 3 in this set, 3 in that set. So I got like the first 2 sets almost complete for dirt cheap. Yep. And like, and then I think we were at the local Camden Comic Con, remember? And I
Right.
was like,
Yeah.
yo, see if there's any stores there that are willing to like run tournaments or run events. And, you know, we found the one store, shout out to Tiki Tiki Board Games in Woodbury, New Jersey. You know,
Yes, sir.
they were
Yes,
the
sir.
ones that opened up a platform for us to like have a space to play. Because I remember
Right.
you said the store, you called me, you're like, Jazz, they got Marvel Dice Masters here. Like, I'm gonna buy some packs. And then I remember I was like,
Yep.
yo, ask them if they have a scene. And you remember you telling them that the store owner at the time, you know, Ryan, he's like, you know, we love the game. We're big into superheroes. We don't really have a scene, but, you know, we're thinking about, you know, maybe having a little event for those who want to come. And I remember the first event, there was like 8 of us.
Right.
And it was just casual. It was super casual. We played, but like, I was loving the competitive nature of the game. So from there, like, they had big events. And from, you know, in South Jersey, you know, the game, the designer, the publisher of that game, WizKids, is from New Jersey. And I remember I was like, we got to start a scene here down south. And then Tiki Tiki had a scene. There was a couple other stores local that had a scene, and we were meeting other players. And I know I was telling you, I was like, I'm going to drive to the store to play on Saturday. I'm going to help start a scene in this store on Sunday. And it grew for us, right? I know I got really heavy competitive into it. I started watching like the national tournaments when they did have it. And I was like, man, I want to be there one day. And lo and
You end up
behold,
competing.
I did find myself there
You
one
end
day.
up competing, yeah.
But what was cool about it, you know, is through that and the players that we met from having the local events, I learned more about board games. I was introduced to certain board games. People were telling me, hey, Jazz, try this game. Or even before or after the Dice Master event, we were playing board games in the store. I remember that. Or but it was cool. Like even when you and I were playing, you know, shout out to our buddy Mag, you know, he's the artist, he's the artiste, you know,
right.
He's the one who actually did our logo for Lobby of Hobbies, LOH. What's cool is I remember like us at like 1 o'clock in the morning at the 24-hour McDonald's, just rolling dice, and just people were looking at us like, what are these guys doing?
Yep, trying to figure out if you're going to get rid of cards or sell them or buy
sell
more
trade them.
or need more dice or,
You know, but was cool about that game is like, yes, you know, collectibles, you have to invest, you know, but we bought, we sold, we traded what we could, you know,
we made it work.
We did make it work, you know, a couple guys on a budget, right?
Right.
We were able to trade stuff. I was able to get you some stuff that I had, that trading things, whatever the case may be. But, you know, I think, you know, I met some good people on it that I was able to network with. And, you know, I think I used to follow some of those guys that had the podcast as it went through. You know, there was a bunch of different podcasts. You know, it's funny because there's probably some people who don't know that that game even still exists, but it's still out there. You know, there's an online platform for that game. They have a Discord channel. They have a Facebook page that people are still active in, while the competitive scene isn't as heavy as it used to be, like with big national tournaments, big regional tournaments like they had when we used to play. There are still players that play it competitively. And, you know, I've been talking to guys that I played against at nationals and that I played against at Worlds. And they're like, yeah, we might get back into it. We kind of have the itch with all the new sets coming out. And I was like, please don't do that to me, because now you're giving me the itch to play the game again too. But what's cool is that, no, I don't own any of my stuff anymore. Like all of my extras and cards and dice, they're actually at my little brother's house. So one day when I get the itch, I just confiscate them from him and I play.
Right.
But
and plus, you know, I still got my stuff, so I ain't getting rid of mine.
But it's a fun game. You know, it's one of those things that you can still play casually, have that competitive nature. And I think for me, that's kind of there's games that fit that niche for me.
Yeah, exactly.
That give me the same thing. But I think for me, when I stepped away from playing it on a heavy competitive level, you know, even at top tier level, it's like, while I'm having an itch to want to go back, I know the time that it took to put into that. You know, now I think with a daughter, I was like, yeah, I don't think I could do it right now. Yeah. She'd have to be a little bit older so I can actually have the time, instead of hearing like, you know, 1 o'clock in the morning when I was practicing for, you know, these nationals
Worlds,
with people all over, the world. We were practicing and sharing, you know, practicing our teams against each other. You know, I don't know if my wife would be too fond of coming into the guest room at like 1 o'clock in the morning with me on the computer and like, you know, dice rolling and making all this noise.
Right.
But, you know, I did invest a lot of time into it.
Yeah. And I think that's where I got lost into it. Like, again, it was just like, when it comes to that competitive part of that game, you needed to have certain cards. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't even like at that point. I guess it lost the fun for me, which is when, because I'm like, oh, like I really want to try out this scenario and see how it works. But if you play competitive, you couldn't really try out certain things. You couldn't be really creative. The cool part, the cool competitive part for me was when we did the drafts.
Oh yeah.
The drafts were my favorite because that whole tactic of open these decks, you better get these cards and keep pass them on, and then build the team you got with the dice you got. Here go your sidekicks. Let's keep it pushing.
And make it work. What's
And
cool about that is like, yeah, like you didn't have to, even if you like drafted the best card in the set, didn't mean that you always won in the
right,
drafts, which was cool.
right, yeah. So that's the thing. Like it was all about trying to figure out how to make a team while learning new cards, which was I thought that was really dope because it really did even the playing field out.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have the money, or you don't have a way to trade, you didn't get the good cards.
Oh, yeah.
So and that was my thing. But there's one more that I have to mention.
All right, what is it?
And this is the invisible one in the debt. It's going to be a question mark. And I'm still trying to figure out if I'm going to do this or not. So, and this one is called my ultimate favorite character of all time, Batman, the animated series Adventures. Now, the only
That's the
reason I
new
bring
one
that
that
up,
just dropped on Kickstarter.
right? The only reason I bring that up is because we've been in conversation about it.
Yes.
We watched gameplay on it, and I think that it's going to be an interesting game. And I just love Batman, period. So the way that the characters look in the game, again, the art, and because it's the animated series has a special place in my heart because me and my mom watched the entire Batman animated series on Cartoon Network when it was out back in the day, as well as Batman Beyond. So it has a nostalgic place for me. One, the game and the tactics of the game looks really, really cool too. So shout out to I think it's IDW Games. Hopefully we can work something out because I do want, ultimately, if I can, my birthday is coming up. Father's Day is Sunday. Holler at your boy for both of us.
Yep.
But the full set with everything is like $225. So that's the only thing that's kind of killing me. But ultimately, it looks like a game that, if purchased, definitely doing a review on later down the line. Definitely will post the different games and the tactics of how that works because they have some amazing mechanics too. So just wanted to shout them out because I love Batman 1. Animated series is my absolute favorite of all time. And it looks like I've been doing my research for the last month. And I know you've been with me on it. So I just wanted to shout them out.
Yeah. The thing about like those Kickstarter games, right? It's like, oh man, I'm going to drop a big penny on this games, right?
Yep.
But, the good benefit, I think, with those Kickstarter games, like sometimes you have, access to, exclusive stuff that you don't get if that game hits retail, or like I said, if that game hits retail, because there are some games that they really never hit retail, or there's a limited release at retail and it's like ridiculously hard to buy. And if you find out you like it later, you got to buy it on the secondary market and it's ridiculously expensive, much more than what the expensive price was, right?
Right.
So, Kickstarter is one of those things that once you get into the hobby, you start finding, games that you like. And
It's the
what's
web.
cool about board game hobbies, it's like the video game hobby, right?
Right.
You find genre that you like and, you try out other genres. And I think what's cool about, different games is like they're mixing the genres together. Say in a board game, like I said, for me, I transitioned over from video games completely into board games, and finding this, I was like, oh man, this board game, it gives me that same type of tactical play or feel that if I was playing like, a video game. And there are, believe it or not, listeners, there are board games out there that make you feel like you're playing a first-person shooter or playing a third-person shooter or, playing this RPG. There are those types of games out there.
Yeah, I know. I remember just off the top of my head, I remember Mafia being one of those type games. That was fun. That Mafia game was definitely dope with the territories.
Where's that? I can't think of it. It is the Godfather game.
Yes, Godfather. That's what it was called.
The Godfather,
Yeah,
Corleone's Empire.
Nice. Yes,
Yep.
that was definitely a dope same type game, you know. But yeah, I
Same
mean,
designer as Blood Rage too.
nice. See
Yes,
what I
same
mean?
designer as Blood Rage, Eric Lang. You
Yep.
um, fun game, really awesome game. It had that territory or mechanic, but it gives you that, like you said, fighting over those territories is like, it kind of, I guess, almost like a little bit of like Grand Theft Auto ish, right? Like
Right.
if it gives you that movie, if you're into the feel of the movie of The Godfather, and you love The Godfather, it gives you that feel, right?
Right. Hmm.
So
Yeah, and that's my top 5, guys, with the surprise one at the end.
so I think we can call it. I think it's been it's been a good first episode. Thank for those that stuck with us, stuck through us. Um, it's
Absolutely.
something that's a new venture for us. We're just getting into it. We just want to share, like I said, the things that we love with you guys, and that's our hobbies. And we went over our first two. Judge's big hobby, video games, my big hobby, board games, and we just want to just kind of let you guys know who we are, what we're here about, and there are things that we have in store, things we want to do. But we want to have you guys connect with us. Judge, you have anything else you want to say for the people?
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody for coming out, man. And if you have any suggestions or anything that you guys feel like you want us to talk about, want us to look into, we're definitely down to for any suggestions. And if you want to contact us or reach out to us, definitely come check us out. We have a Facebook page, Lobby of Hobbies, Instagram, same thing, Twitter, same thing. And we even have a website, which is the Lobby of Hobbies .wixsite.com /LOH. So the THELOBBYOFHOBBIES .wix WIX site SITE.com /LOH.
Awesome. Yeah, we've stuff that we've been just put on. I think through this whole pandemic, right? We've been trying to find ways to stay connected. I think we've been trying to find ways to be like, hey, we have a little bit of extra time on our hands, right? To kind of do things. It's like, what, we haven't got this podcast going, but why don't we start connecting with people? Let's put up a Facebook page. Let's get an Instagram, a Twitter, all those things. And like Judge said, it's like, if you need to go to Facebook, if you don't even have to worry about searching it too, right? But if you go to facebook.com /the Lobby of Hobbies, it'll take you right to our page. You can sign in, hit that like button. You follow through with the things that we're doing. Like I said, Judge mentioned it before. We're doing that Dice Throne tournament. We got 10 people in that tournament. Instagram, Twitter, it's at Lobby of Hobbies. And then the email is, if you want to drop us an email or drop us a message or anything on one of these, like I said, you have show topics, things you want to discuss. It is thelobbyofhobbies@gmail.com. Hit us up on those platforms, find out who we are, what we're about. Any other questions, things like that, you can get us on the website. Any of these platforms, you can reach out to us. And we'll get back to you. We're fairly open people. You can ask us anything, and we'll get back to you. And if you have an idea for a show, if you have a topic you want us to discuss or bring up, we'll find a spot for it. That's what it's about. It's about the community. Let's share hobbies. Like I said, if it's sports, we'll talk about sports. I know Judge is not the biggest sports person, but the thing is, I'm not the biggest video game person anymore, right? I'm not the biggest movie buff or TV buff, but I have the things that I do like in TV and movies, right? We could share, we could talk about it. That's the idea. It's that, again, the idea of this is to enter, share, and discover. And I definitely want to discover some new things.
Right. Same here.
All right. So thanks for being with us, and check us out in our next episode. Thanks a lot, guys.
Y'all. Peace out.